Look at almost any tin of matcha. You'll find the same two words, stone ground. Ground slowly on granite the traditional way, the way it's been done for centuries. But times have changed. The majority of the matcha in the world isn't stone ground anymore. My name is Christian. I run a tea brand called OnewithTea. Last spring, I went a few weeks in Japan and walking through the farms and the factories where it all actually happens. And so here's, what I want to give to you. Three things. One is how matcha actually is really made from the field to the powder. Two, the two ways that it actually gets ground, stone and machine ground, and the three kind of subcategories of machines doing most of the work. And then three, what actually matters when you're standing deciding what to buy. Okay, let's get into it. The most important step in making matcha happens before anybody picks a leaf. For about the last 3 weeks before the harvest, they cover the plants in shade. So that's usually plastic nets. Now, these days, back in the day, they used straw, and that's what they used to cover the rows of tea in the tea field, right? And they're blocking almost all the sunlight, roughly about 85 to 90% of it. So think about what that means for the plant. You're taking away one of the things that it wants most, which is sunlight. And the plant, of course, has a reaction to that. It floods its leaves with chlorophyll, trying to catch with what little light is left, right? So it's everything, it's kind of like struggling. It's like, give me all the light that's left, right? So that's where the deep, almost like electric green from matcha comes from. And the plant also holds on to an amino acid called L-theanine instead of burning it off. So that's the savory, brothy sweetness, or sometimes, umami, what they call it. Now, shade really with matcha isn't just a side thing, it's the main thing with matcha, right? That's what really makes it different from other teas. And when it comes to the harvest itself, to the picking, and, for the best matchas in the world, that's still done by hand, but most leaves are cut by machine. And only the youngest leaves, the top few on each shoot, are being picked. And the first harvest is in spring, is the one that matters most because the plant has the most nutrients in it. And now, here's a number that surprised me personally. Hand-picked first harvest tencha is only about 3% in the world of what gets sold as matcha. 3%, so that's tiny, okay? Which means almost everything else you're seeing is machine cut, later pickings, and probably a little bit coarser leaf, okay? So same word on the tin, very different thing inside. And after the picking is where the leaf gets steamed. Speed matters at this time, and within hours of the picking, the leaves actually, get steamed. It stops an enzymatic process, and it stops the leaf from oxidizing, right? It locks that green in place. That's also kind of like why green tea versus black tea, right? Black tea is oxidized, so they let the leaf sit, draw oxygen. That's why it gets a little browner. Versus green tea, it's just like they want to preserve that green, okay? So this is the moment that really green tea stays green. And here's what makes matcha's leaf different from almost every other tea. Now, with sencha, the everyday Japanese green tea, they roll the leaves, twist them into those tight little needles, and matcha, the leaf isn't rolled at all. It's dried flat gently, and then the stems and the veins got stripped away until all that's left is a soft green kind of like flesh of the leaf. And that flat, deveined leaf has its own name. It's called tencha. And tencha is basically matcha waiting to be ground into powder, okay? So here's the part that I had wrong for a long time. It's the part that kind of like the marketing skips in the West. And not all matcha is stone ground. Like we always think, ooh, great. And then they put it in a granite mill and then there it goes. No, the majority is actually machine ground matcha. And the reason for that is because it's a lot faster. So with granite stone mills, the output is about 30 to 40 grams, which is, about 1 ounce per hour, which is tiny, right? With machine mills, it's much higher and faster throughput. So it's anywhere from about 1 kilogram to 50 kilograms an hour, depending on the machine. And there are 3 different machine types. There's ball or bead mill, which has ceramic spheres tumbling the leaf in kind of like a cooled chamber, a lot faster than stone. There's hammer mills, which the blades are tearing the leaf apart at high speed, mostly used for bigger volume everyday grade matcha, also culinary matcha. And then you have jet mills, which is kind of compressed air blasting the leaf apart, which is even faster and the finest grind of the three. So some people treat machine milled matchas as inferior, like machines are bad and granite is the only real thing because it's slow and it's the way it always has been done. But that hasn't been necessarily my experience. So what I've seen in my travels is that they're just tools. That's it. Like you pick the one that fits the leaf and fits the purpose. Like you can even adjust the size of the particles with the machine settings. And it comes down to microns, what they call the unit, the size unit for matcha particles. And the benchmark, no matter which method, is somewhere between 5 and 10 microns. Okay, so the very finest matcha gets down to around 5 microns. Below that range, it stops feeling silky and it starts feeling gritty, chalky. So yeah, you don't want to go under 5 microns really. And hitting that fineness is harder than it sounds because the moment you speed up a mill, you also generate heat, and that heat is kind of like the enemy of flavor. And it's really what separates these methods more than the target size itself. And the romance about stone milled matcha is mostly an export thing, I feel. So it's a story that we're telling over here in the West, I feel. But the world drinks a lot of matcha right now, and that demand could never possibly be met by an army of granite wheels turning all day. It's just too slow and too little output. So machine milled doesn't really mean it's bad. It just means, that the volume had to come from somewhere, and machines are the solution, right? So the question is, is it really, does it really matter how much it gets ground? And the way, people in the industry put it is that the raw material, the tencha, and where the matcha comes from is about 90% of the outcome, and the milling method is about 10%. So that's a rule of thumb, not a study, right? But from what I've seen, it's about right. And a beautiful shaded first harvest leaf ground fast in a machine will beat a mediocre leaf ground on granite every day. So yeah. Now, one more piece that I think it'd be great to, be honest about is that stone ground describes a machine, right? It doesn't tell you whether the leaf was, or describes a method of processing. And it doesn't necessarily tell you whether the leaf was, shaded for how long, where it was harvested, where it was grown, like, was it even tencha to begin with? Sometimes they just take the whole leaf and just like put it through the blower or the jet mill machine, right? And how fresh it is. So those are the real signals. And I think that's really something to keep in mind. And for you, what to, take with you here is like, here's instead, like what I'd ask instead is like 3 things. Like, when was it picked? Was it first harvest, spring? Because that's what you want. And if nobody will tell you, then, that itself isn't answer in itself, okay? Second, was it shaded for how long and for how long? Because that dictates the flavor. And third, how fresh it is. So matcha is not a thing that improves on a shelf. It can have a long shelf life. That's not the issue with matcha, especially if you cool it. But yeah, it's really important that, you look out for that. So notice that none of these 3 questions are about the machine or the milling method, right? They're about the leaf and all about whether the person selling it to you actually knows the answer. And that, I think, is the real test, I think. Like, not the mill, whether anybody can tell you where it came from. Like, I would say, don't buy the marketing, buy the leaf, right? Buy the origin. And the next time you whisk a bowl, know what you're actually drinking. I have another video on this channel that goes deeper into what some grade words actually mean, or, if ceremonial is actually a grade, right? So if you want to keep pulling that thread, feel free to check that out. And yeah, if you want matcha where we can tell you about the leaf, where it grew, and when it was picked, that's what we source at OnewithTea. It's fully organic, and the link is below whenever you want to check it out. Okay, I got more videos coming on this topic, so don't forget to subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one, and I wish you something delicious in your cup.